I awakened the most useless F-rank ability in history, Refresh. It can refresh a targeted non-living object within a 1-meter radius to its initial state. But in practice, when I refreshed a book, it was still the same book. Refreshing a towel left it as the same towel. So, in the 3rd month of the zombie apocalypse, my girlfriend took the last half-pack of biscuits and got into another man's car without looking back. Before she left, she tossed an empty instant noodle container at my feet. As if shooing away a dog, she said, "Darling, don't blame me. Your ability is just too worthless. If I stay with you, I'll starve to death sooner or later." In despair, I stared at the empty container, and a crazy thought flashed through my mind. Refresh, a rich aroma of braised beef, suddenly burst out. I tore open the packaging, and inside was a neatly placed noodle cake and 3 seasoning packets. I was stunned, so my ability wasn't useless. We had all just understood it wrong. The so-called restoring to an initial state didn't mean restoring it to how it was a second ago. Instead, it restores it to its original state when it was first created. For an empty instant noodle container, its initial state is a complete, unopened package of instant noodles. At that moment, my heart was pounding like a drum in my chest, but not out of fear. It was from pure exhilaration. I looked around the ransacked convenience store. The shelves were covered with torn open snack bags and empty drink bottles. To anyone else, this was all trash. But to me, right now, this was an endless treasure trove. I didn't rush to boil water for the noodles. In the apocalypse, the smell of any food can attract unwanted guests. I carefully crept up to the store's 2nd-floor warehouse, then blocked the door with a heavy shelf. Only after confirming it was safe did I begin my experiment. I placed the empty noodle container on the floor. I silently thought, refresh. The container in front of me shimmered with a barely visible ripple, and instantly, a brand new package of noodles appeared. Again, I suppressed my ecstasy and kept repeating it. 10 minutes later, piled up in front of me was a small mountain. A small mountain made of 60 boxes of instant noodles. My ability's cooldown time is 10 seconds. This meant I could have an infinite supply of instant noodles. Then, my gaze fell on an empty mineral water bottle. Refresh. Instantly, a 500 milliliter bottle of purified water appeared. I then looked over at the floor, at the empty packaging of a first aid kit. Refresh. A brand new first aid kit appeared in my hands. My breathing became rapid. Food, medicine, the most precious supplies in the apocalypse. For me, they were now inexhaustible. Limitless. Lu Rian, you thought my ability was useless, didn't you? Just you wait. One day, you'll be on your knees, begging me to spare you a single bite to eat. For the next 3 days, I locked myself in the warehouse. The mountain of empty packages in the warehouse became my raw materials. Potato chips, biscuits, chocolate. I refreshed every single thing that could fill a stomach, creating several large boxes of each. All sorts of drinks and mineral water were piled up in half a corner of the room. But most importantly, I found an empty gas canister, which I paired with a portable gas stove I found in the store. After closing all the windows in the warehouse, I could finally have a hot bite to eat. I boiled a pot of water and tore open 3 seasoning packets. I carefully placed the noodle cake inside, and when that long-lost aroma hit my nostrils, the tears finally started to fall. I cried as I wolfed it down. This was the most filling and reassuring meal I'd had since the apocalypse began. After eating and drinking my fill, my mind started working again. Hiding here forever wasn't an option. This convenience store would be breached by zombies sooner or later, or discovered by other survivors. I had to find a safer base, and I needed weapons. In the apocalypse, having only food and water just makes you a lamb for the slaughter. I crammed all my supplies into 2 huge hiking backpacks, then opened a crack in the door to observe the world outside. A few zombies were wandering aimlessly on the street. I took a deep breath, tightening my grip on a fruit knife I had refreshed, making it as sharp as new. It was time to hit the road. Getting out of the convenience store was tense but uneventful. I used the complex terrain of the store's back alley to avoid most of the zombies. When I occasionally ran into a lone one, I'd smash it hard with a refreshed, full can of Coke. Then, as it staggered, I'd finish it off with the fruit knife. My destination was the Blue Bay community in the west of the city. It's a well-known high-end residential area in this city. Its security system is top-notch, and the surrounding walls are high and thick. It should be able to hold out for a while in the early days of the apocalypse. More importantly, my parents' house is there. When the apocalypse hit, I was at school, and I lost contact with them. Finding them is my only obsession now. However, the journey to the Blue Bay community was tougher than I had imagined. The city was completely paralyzed. Abandoned vehicles blocked every main road. Along the way, I saw too many human tragedies, violent conflicts over supplies. At that moment, I came to the profound realization that Lu Rian's betrayal was perhaps just the most insignificant part of this cruel world. Here, humanity had long since collapsed. By dusk on the third day, I finally reached the outskirts of the Blue Bay community. The tall iron gates were shut tight. I could vaguely see figures standing guard on the walls. This place had become a survivor stronghold, just as I thought. I hid in the distance and observed for a long time. To get into the community, I would have to go through their inspection. So, I rearranged my backpack, hiding most of my supplies in a concealed sewer drain. I left only 2 bottles of water and a pack of crackers, pretending to be an ordinary refugee, and walked towards the gate. "Stop, who are you?" a sharp voice yelled from the top of the wall. I raised my hands, looked up, and showed my face, which was grimy with dust. "I'm a resident here. My name is Lin Fan. I live in Building 17. Lin Fan from Building 17. Verify that." The person up top went silent for a moment, seemingly checking it over a walkie-talkie. A moment later, the iron gate opened a crack, and a man holding a steel pipe walked out with a wary expression. ID. He was a man of few words. I took out the ID card I had prepared from my pocket. I handed it over. He checked it, then looked me up and down. "Just you? Where are your supplies?" Hearing this, I lowered my head, my voice carrying a perfectly timed hint of a sob and fear. "They were all stolen on the way. This is all the food I have left." The man frowned, seemingly unconvinced, but faced with my scrawny frame and pitiful appearance, he finally let his guard down. "Come in. Remember the community rules. All newcomers must hand over half of their supplies for unified distribution." Hearing that, my heart tightened. Luckily, I had come prepared. So, I nodded obediently. I handed over a bottle of water and half a pack of crackers. The man took the items. A flash of disdain crossed his eyes, but he still waved his hand and let me in. After entering the community, the scene inside made me relax a little. Although the atmosphere was still tense, at least there was order. Some people were patrolling, some were reinforcing the fortifications. There were also women and children, gathered together in the community clubhouse. It was like an isolated island in this apocalypse, temporarily cut off from the bloodshed and chaos outside. An older woman in charge of registration told me that the community is now managed by a man named Leopard Bro. He used to be the property manager here. After the apocalypse, he awakened an Earth-based ability and organized a guard team to protect everyone. All residents can receive a portion of food every day based on their contribution points. If you want to get more, you have to join the patrol team or the logistics group. I used my physical weakness as an excuse and didn't join any team for the time being. The most urgent thing was to find my parents. But when I anxiously ran all the way to my front door, what I saw was the security door violently broken open and the ransacked mess inside. Seeing this, my heart instantly sank. I rushed into the house, frantically screaming for my mom and dad, but I was met with a deathly silence. The coffee table in the living room was covered in a thin layer of dust, which meant they had been gone for at least a few days. Although there were signs of a struggle on the floor, there were no bloodstains. Perhaps that was a small blessing in this misfortune. I collapsed onto the floor, overwhelmed by a sense of confusion and fear like never before. I didn't know where to find them. Just as I was lost in despair, I heard footsteps outside the door. A frivolous voice rang out, "Oh? Looks like one slipped through the net." I shot my head up. I saw 2 men blocking the doorway. The one in the lead had a shaved head and was eyeing me with ill intent. I recognized him. He was a small-time leader under Leopard Bro named Scorpion. Scorpion licked his lips, his gaze like he was looking at a piece of fish on a cutting board. "The owners of your house. They owed our Leopard Bro a lot of contribution points a few days ago. They were kicked out. This house belongs to us now." My pupils contracted. "What did you do to my parents?" "HMPH, just kick them out. This is what happens to useless people in the apocalypse. But, seeing as you're still somewhat capable, if you're willing to stay and run some errands for us, do a few things. We could consider letting you make a living here." I was too naive. thinking this was a safe haven. Turns out, it's survival of the fittest here too. Watching them get closer, my hand quietly reached for the side pocket of my backpack. In there was a brand new fruit knife that I had refreshed. But just as I was about to fight for my life, a cold female voice came from the doorway. "Stop!" Scorpion and his accomplice froze in unison. When they saw who it was, the smiles on their faces instantly stiffened. They were replaced by fawning expressions. The woman at the door was wearing a black combat uniform. She was carrying a tang blade, its edge still stained with dark red blood. Behind her were several other squad members who looked just as fierce. I recognized her. She is Shen Ling, captain of the Blade, the strongest combat squad in the guard. Rumor has it she awakened a rare metal-type ability. Her power is immeasurable. She's Leopard's most trusted weapon. Shen Ling ignored Scorpion. Her gaze fell on me as she asked coolly, "What's going on?" As if grabbing a lifeline, I quickly said, "They were trying to bully me." Scorpion's face changed as he hurriedly explained, "Captain Shen, don't listen to his nonsense. His parents owed contribution points. We were just here to repossess the house. Repossessing a house requires 2 people? And blocking the door?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried an undeniable pressure. "Now get lost." Scorpion looked as if he'd just been granted amnesty. He grabbed his accomplice and scrambled away in terror. After the crisis was averted, my tense body went limp, and I almost collapsed. Shen Ling looked at me, frowning slightly. "Stay away from that bunch in the future." After saying that, she seemed unwilling to get more involved and turned to leave. I quickly called out to her, "Captain Shen, do you know where my parents were sent? Their names are Lin Jiangguo and Wang Shumei." Shen Ling thought for a moment. "I have some recollection. Leopard sent all the old, weak, sick, and disabled who have no abilities and can't do heavy labor to the abandoned factory outside the north gate of the complex. He called it, fending for themselves." My heart suddenly sank. A place like an abandoned factory, with no food and no protection. How is that any different from just waiting to die? After Shen Ling left, I immediately closed the door. I have to go to the factory at the north gate. I have to find my parents. But right now, I need strength. I took a chocolate bar out of my backpack and devoured it in a few bites to regain my energy. Then, my eyes fell on the steel pipe Scorpion had left on the floor. It was rusty and even a little bent. I placed my hand on it and refreshed it. Instantly, a brand new steel pipe, gleaming with a cold metallic light, appeared in my hand. That wasn't enough. I ran to the kitchen and found an outdoor survival kit my dad used to have. Inside was a multi-tool shovel and a survival axe, and also a dagger. They were all a bit dull from not being used for a long time. I refreshed the 3 cold weapons, and in an instant, they were restored to their original, sharpest state. When night fell, I took advantage of the gap during the patrol team's shift change and quietly slipped out to the north gate of the complex. This area was much more desolate than the main gate. Only 2 guards were on duty, yawning. I didn't alert them. Instead, I found a blind spot in the surveillance and used the brand new rope that had just respawned. I easily climbed over the wall that was more than 3 meters high. Outside the wall was a wasteland. In the distance, I could see the silhouette of a factory, like a silent, steel beast. The air was filled with a rotten stench, and I could occasionally hear the low growls of zombies. I gripped the steel pipe, crouched low, and quickly made my way towards the factory. However, the closer I got to the factory, the more zombies there were. I hid behind a broken wall and saw at least a dozen zombies gathered at the factory gate. They seemed to be drawn by some kind of sound. They were frantically pounding on the factory's closed iron gate, and from inside, I could faintly hear weak cries and screams. Mom and Dad were in there. I was frantic, but my instincts told me I couldn't just barge in. I scanned the surroundings. I noticed a row of high windows on the side of the factory, about 4 meters off the ground. Maybe I could get in through there. Once I made up my mind, I sprang into action. I picked up a rock and threw it with all my might at a deserted car in the distance. The rock smashed against the car window, making a sharp sound. Just as I'd hoped, the zombies at the gate were drawn to it. They sluggishly turned and shambled towards the source of the noise. Seizing the opportunity, I bolted to the factory wall. I pulled the rope out of my backpack, one end tied to a climbing pick. With a powerful swing, the climbing pick lodged firmly on the windowsill. I took a deep breath and nimbly climbed up the rope. I quickly climbed through the window and dropped down inside the factory. It was a huge production workshop, with rusty machines and scattered parts everywhere. Only a few beams of moonlight shone through the damaged roof. At the other end of the workshop, I heard suppressed sobs and arguments. I carefully followed the sounds. In a corner barricaded with old machinery, I saw dozens of survivors. Most of them were elderly people and children. I spotted my parents in the crowd right away. They were huddled in a corner. My mom was hugging her knees, crying silently. My dad was holding her tightly, comforting her non-stop. My eyes immediately welled up with tears. I called out, my voice choked with emotion. Everyone was startled by my voice. They all whipped their heads around to look. My mom and dad shot their heads up. The moment they saw me, the looks on their faces turned from shock to pure joy. My mom let out a scream and scrambled over to me. The three of us hugged each other tightly, a family reunited in this desperate apocalypse. The joy of our reunion washed away all the fear and unease. But soon, a harsh voice shattered the tender moment. Hey, where did you pop up from? A man with a scar on his face stood up, followed by a few able-bodied young men. He was clearly the leader here. He stared at the bulging backpack on my back, his eyes full of greed. You've got some skills, kid. Making it all the way here on your own. What's in the bag? Take it out and show everyone. I pulled my parents behind me and looked at him coldly. This is my stuff. Your stuff? Scarface sneered. Around here, there's no such thing as your stuff. There's only my stuff. If you know what's good for you, you'll hand over the bag. Otherwise, he brandished the machete in his hand. The implied threat was unmistakable, and the thugs behind him also began to close in. They glared menacingly at the old, weak, and sick people they had herded here. They were furious but dared not speak out, and could only look at me with pity. Seeing this, my dad quickly pulled me behind him and forced a smile at Scarface. Sir, my son doesn't know any better. His bag only has a little food in it. We'll give it all to you. Just don't give him a hard time. Too late, Scarface laughed. I don't just want his bag now, I want his life. The moment the words left his mouth, Scarface reached out to grab me. A cold glint flashed in my eyes. I didn't retreat, but advanced instead. The steel pipe in my hand swung from a tricky angle and slammed viciously onto his wrist. With a sickening crack, Scarface's wrist bent at an unnatural angle. It just folded. Everyone was stunned. No one would have expected that a scrawny-looking kid like me would actually dare to fight back. Scarface was sweating bullets from the pain. His face contorted as he roared, "You dare to hit me? Get him, grab him, I'm gonna make him wish he was never born." The other thugs snapped out of it and charged at me, shouting. I tossed the backpack into my parents' arms, then raised the steel pipe to fend off the attack. A thug swung a wooden club down at me. I dodged to the side and with a flick of my wrist, the other end of the pipe struck him squarely in a vulnerable spot. He let out an instant scream of pain. Doubled over, he collapsed to the ground. I made no wasted movements. Every strike was aimed only at their weak joints, just enough to protect myself. What terrified them even more was that my stamina seemed endless. After taking down 2 of them in a row, the remaining thugs were scared. They didn't dare to come forward. Scarface clutched his broken wrist, staring at me with a mix of shock and rage. Who the hell are you? Are you an Esper, too? I didn't answer him. I just stared at him with cold eyes. All the suffering and hardship I'd endured these past few months in the apocalypse. In this very moment, it all transformed into a towering inferno of rage. Either get lost, or die. My ferocity stunned everyone. Scarface's expression flickered with uncertainty. He never expected to have picked a fight with the wrong person. However, just as we were at a standstill, the factory's iron gate suddenly let out a massive boom, followed by a second, and a third. At the sound, the crowd instantly fell into a commotion. The zombies outside have started ramming the gate. What's going on? Why are the zombies suddenly going berserk? Panic spread like a plague. Scarface couldn't be bothered with me anymore. Along with his thugs, he used his body and random objects to desperately hold the teetering iron gate shut, but there were too many zombies. The iron gate was severely bent from the impacts, and the bolt was groaning loudly. Looked like it could collapse at any moment. An atmosphere of despair settled over everyone. My parents were also trembling in fear, clutching my hand tightly. I glanced over. It was an old, rusty iron gate. A bold idea formed in my mind. Then, gripping the steel pipe, I walked towards the iron gate under everyone's astonished gazes. What are you doing? You wanna die? A goon holding the door shut yelled at me. I ignored him. I walked right up and placed my hand on the cold, rusted door panel. Then, as everyone watched in disbelief, a miracle happened. The iron door, all battered and dented, began to smooth out, as if time itself were reversing. Even the warped doorframe straightened itself out, and in just a moment, a brand new steel door, gleaming with a metallic shine, stood before them. The door didn't even budge against the pounding of the zombies outside. It only let out a series of dull thuds. The entire workshop fell deathly silent. Everyone stared at me, dumbfounded. Scarface's jaw dropped. He completely forgot about the pain in his wrist, pointing at me and stammering, Your power is restoration? I didn't bother to explain. I pulled back my hand and gave him a cold look. In the apocalypse, strength is the only thing that matters. My earlier ruthlessness, combined with this seemingly miraculous feat, had completely shattered Scarface's confidence. He looked at me, and the greed in his eyes was replaced by deep, primal fear. Boss. I'm sorry, I was blind. I didn't realize who I was dealing with. Please, be the bigger person. Don't waste your time on a nobody like me. I said nothing, and just walked over to my parents. My mom looked at me, her expression a mix of emotions. Pride, worry, and a hint of strangeness, as if she didn't quite know me. I took her hand and gave her a reassuring look. Mom, don't be scared. I'm here now. Then, I reached into my huge backpack and pulled out a self-heating meal box. A sausage and a bottle of clean water. I handed it to them. Mom, Dad, eat something. The aroma of the food instantly drew everyone's attention. The other survivors, who hadn't eaten in who knows how long, stared at the food in my parents' hands. Swallowing hard, their eyes filled with desperate hunger. Scarface and his goons were practically drooling. In an apocalypse where food is more precious than gold, for me to casually pull out so much was even more shocking than me fixing the door. After I'd done all that, I turned my gaze back to Scarface. From now on, I'm in charge here. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly to everyone's ears. A muscle in Scarface's jaw twitched. Finally, he hung his head in defeat. Taking over the factory's stronghold was easier than I expected. Faced with absolute power and seemingly endless supplies, what little authority Scarface had crumbled instantly. I didn't kick them out, though. Manpower is a resource in the apocalypse, too. I put them on guard duty and had them clear out the nearby zombies. I, in turn, was responsible for providing food and supplies. Every day, I'd lock myself in a private room, pretending to take inventory, when I was actually spawning more food like crazy. And all the other daily necessities. When box after box of brand new supplies appeared before them, everyone looked at me with a sense of awe. They all assumed I had some kind of spatial ability, a pocket dimension filled with endless supplies. With plenty of food and a safe place to live, the spark of life slowly returned to the survivors' faces. Under my leadership, the entire abandoned factory became well organized. My parents became my right-hand assistants, helping me manage people and distribute supplies. Among the group, they rediscovered their dignity and sense of worth, and their spirits improved with each passing day. Everything was heading in the right direction, but there was still one thing nagging at me. That was the Blue Bay community, and its property manager, a man called Brother Bao. He kicked out my parents, two unarmed old people, and left them to fend for themselves. Sooner or later, I was going to settle that score with him. Besides, the defenses and living conditions at the Blue Bay community were far better than this rundown factory. I wanted to give my parents, and all the people who follow me, a safer home. It was time to go back and pay that Brother Bao a visit. A week later, I was fully prepared. I used my refresh ability on several abandoned electric scooters I found in the factory, restoring them all to a fully charged, factory new condition. I also created dozens of brand new protective suits, safety helmets, and steel-toed boots. As for weapons, aside from steel pipes and axes, I also had my people take the steel materials in the factory and fashion them into many sharp spears. As for Scarface and his core group of followers, they were now fiercely loyal to me. I gave them food to eat and warm clothes to wear. In the apocalypse, that's an incredible kindness. I selected 20 of the strongest team members, and Scarface was among them. Before we set off, I looked at the team, all geared up and ready to go, and gave a brief motivational speech. We're not going back there to beg. We're going to take back what's rightfully ours. The Blue Bay community has sturdy walls and comfortable houses. We're going to build a truly safe home there. Whoever is with me, get on the vehicles. Not a single person hesitated. After witnessing my incredible abilities, they had developed an almost blind faith in me. Our 20-person convoy headed majestically toward the Blue Bay community. When we arrived at the north gate of Blue Bay, the guards on the wall had clearly spotted us. They stared at our well-equipped team, completely stunned. Scarface, weren't you kicked out? What are you doing back here? Scarface was now my loyal supporter. He stood up straight and replied in a booming voice, "We're here to discuss a partnership with Brother Bao." "A partnership? With you lot?" The guard scoffed. Just then, I got out of my vehicle, walked to the front, and said calmly, "Go tell Brother Bao, Lin Fan is back." The guard didn't recognize me, but seeing me surrounded by everyone in the center, he could tell I was an important figure. After a moment's hesitation, he reported it up on his walkie-talkie. Soon, the north gate opened, and Brother Bao walked out with a large group of men. Among them was Shen Ling, the captain of the previous team. Brother Bao was a fat, middle-aged man in his 40s. His eyes were shrewd and arrogant. When he saw our team, especially our brand new gear and our vigorous appearance, a flicker of surprise and greed flashed in his eyes. Well, who do we have here? If it isn't little brother Lin Fan. It's been a few days. Brother Lin, where did you strike it rich, huh? Brother Bao, let's not beat around the bush. I want to move my people into the Blue Bay community. However, Brother Bao burst out laughing, as if he just heard the funniest joke in the world. Brother Lin, are you dreaming? This is my territory. I'm the one who took Blue Bay. Why should we let you move in? This is why. I snapped my fingers, and behind me, Scarface brought a crate forward. When he opened it, the crate was packed full. It was completely filled with perfectly packaged compressed biscuits. Seeing this, Leopard Bro's laughter died instantly. The guards behind him all gasped. Although Blue Bay community is well defended, with so many people, their consumption is huge. Food has always been scarce. Their daily ration is just a single piece of black bread. Where did you get so much food? You don't need to know where I got it. I'm only asking you one thing. Are we cooperating or not? Leopard Bro's eyes shifted. How do you propose we cooperate? It's simple. My people move in, and we'll be responsible for providing some of the food. You'll be responsible for the community's security, and we will manage this place together. Leopard Bro's expression darkened. Listen, kid, your ambition is a little too big. I'm the respected leader of this base. How could I possibly share power with some wet behind the ears kid who came out of nowhere? Those are my terms. If you don't agree, then we'll just fight our way in. Fight your way in? Ha ha ha, with just the 20-something of you? Shen Ling, he commanded. Shen Ling and the Blade Squad behind her took a sharp step forward in unison. A murderous aura instantly filled the air. The Blade Squad is Blue Bay community's elite unit. Every one of them is a battle-hardened ability user. My people immediately tensed up, but my expression remained unchanged. I looked at Shen Ling, the woman who had helped me once before. She was looking back at me, her eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and surprise. Captain Shen, do you also think we can't get in? Shen Ling was silent for a moment before speaking. Mr. Lin, you are very powerful. But Blue Bay community has 200 guards. Forcing your way in won't do you any good. Her words were meant as a well-intentioned warning, but Leopard Bro just laughed smugly. Did you hear that? Don't push your luck. Hand over all of your food, and I might consider letting you and your parents move in. As ordinary residents, as for these men of yours, they can go back to wherever they came from. That was his answer. He wants to take all my supplies and then kick out all my men. What a brilliant scheme. I laughed. Looks like there's nothing left to talk about. I slowly raised my right hand, then aimed it at what was behind them. The tallest residential building in the community. I looked at them, and said, word by word, I'm giving you one last chance. Let me in, or I'll make this building disappear. My words plunged the scene into a strange silence, which was immediately followed by an eruption of deafening laughter. Leopard Bro was laughing so hard he was nearly in tears. Shen Ling, did you hear that? That's the funniest joke I've heard all year. However, Shen Ling wasn't laughing. She just stared at me intently, her eyes filled with apprehension. She had a feeling I wasn't joking. And I wasn't. My smile vanished, and I began to count down. The smile on Leopard Bro's face froze. Everyone's laughter died down. They looked at each other, starting to feel that something wasn't right. That 30-story high-rise is the landmark building of the Blue Bay residential area. It's also where most of the guards' families live. When I counted to 1, Bao Zhe finally roared, trying to hide his fear, you're just bluffing. Get him, but it was already too late. As I finished the countdown, I activated my power. Not on an object within a 1-meter radius, but by extending the range of my power. Expanding it instantly to its absolute limit, without holding anything back. I focused on that magnificent building over 100 meters away, and silently thought, refresh. The entire world seemed to fall silent, as if someone had hit the mute button. Under the horrified gazes of hundreds of people, that towering, 30-story skyscraper began to flicker violently, like a TV screen with a bad signal. Its silhouette started to blur and turn transparent. In just 1 second, that building, along with everything inside it, vanished into thin air. All that was left was an empty foundation, as if it had never existed at all. The expressions on everyone's faces froze. They were all stunned and bewildered, and filled with an indescribable terror. Bao Ji's men completely broke down. They dropped their weapons, crying and screaming as they scattered in all directions. As if fleeing from some apocalyptic disaster. Bao Jie himself collapsed onto the ground, his face ashen, and his lips trembling. He couldn't utter a single word. The 200-man guard unit he was so proud of had crumbled in an instant. As for Shen Ling and the Sharp Blade squad behind her, although they hadn't broken down, every single one of their faces was filled with shock and terror. Shen Ling's hand, gripping her Tang sword, was trembling slightly. She looked at me, her eyes completely transformed. She was no longer looking at a somewhat capable survivor, but at a god walking among mortals. I slowly lowered my hand and walked over to Bao Jie, who was limp like a pile of mud. He looked up, staring at me as if I were a monster. His body shaking like a leaf. Now, can I bring my people in? Bao Jie nodded his head frantically, scrambling out of the way. I paid him no more mind, and turned to Scarface and the others behind me, who were also in a daze, and said, "We're going in." My team members finally snapped out of their stupor. They looked at me, their eyes filled with fanatical adoration. They knew their leader was strong, but they had never imagined he could be this powerful. To erase an entire building. What kind of incredible power was that? Following a leader like this, how could they not survive the apocalypse? Our group, under the awestruck gazes of everyone in the Blue Bay residential area, drove into the community in a grand procession. No one dared to stop us anymore. Shen Ling and her Sharp Blade squad followed us silently from behind, almost as if they were our escorts. I knew that from this day forward, the Blue Bay residential area had a new master. After settling into Blue Bay, the first thing I did was to deal with Bao Jie and his core henchmen who had been throwing their weight around. I had them locked up. I didn't kill them, I just nullified their powers. After my refresh ability evolved, it could now affect living beings. I could refresh a person's body, restoring them to their peak physical condition. Naturally, I can also refresh the power core inside his body, restoring him to his initial state before he awakened his powers. When Brother Bao went from being an earth-powered user to a completely powerless fatty, his spirit completely shattered. As for Shen Ling and her Blade Squad, I chose to win them over. They are true warriors. They have a conscience, which is a rare strength in these apocalyptic times. In front of Shen Ling, I refreshed a Tang sword that had been dulled in battle. Then I refreshed a box of nearly expired anti-inflammatory pills, turning them into brand new medicine. Shen Ling watched all of this and finally understood. My ability wasn't some kind of spatial power, nor was it some kind of restoration. It was a power that she couldn't comprehend, something akin to a law of nature. She was silent for a long time. Finally, she bowed her head to me. From this day on, Blade Squad will follow your orders. Having won over Blade Squad, I finally had true control over the Blue Bay residential area. I established new rules. Everyone, regardless of whether they had powers, could get food as long as they worked. I used my limitless supplies to quickly win people's hearts, while also clearing out all the bad apples in the community. Under my governance, the Blue Bay community was revitalized. My parents looked at me, their eyes filled with relief and pride. They never asked what my ability really was. They only knew that their son had grown up and become someone everyone could rely on. After the base was up and running smoothly, I began to ponder a deeper question. What were the limits of my ability? Refreshing instant noodles, refreshing buildings. So, could I refresh a living person? I found a guard who had been scratched by one of the infected in battle, and was already starting to mutate. Everyone thought he was a lost cause. I dismissed everyone, closed the door, and placed my hand on his forehead. A soft, white light enveloped the guard. His pained screams gradually subsided. The mutations on his body receded at a visible rate. I watched his wound disappear. And a storm raged in my heart. I had succeeded. I had restored his body to its initial state before the infection. This meant that the virus from the infected was no longer a terminal illness to me. This discovery was more thrilling than refreshing an entire building. If I could cure the zombie virus, did that mean I could save more people? Or even end this apocalypse? A grand plan began to take shape in my mind. But before that, I had some personal business to settle. I summoned Shen Ling and asked her if there was any recent news about a survivor team called Blazing Fire. The team with that D-class pyrokinetic, Chen Yan, and my ex-girlfriend, Lu Rian. Shen Ling pulled out a map. She pointed to a large supermarket in the east of the city and said, according to our intel, they've occupied that place. They're the biggest power in the eastern district. Their leader is Chen Yan, a peak D-class pyrokinetic. A cold glint flashed in my eyes. Tomorrow, we'll pay our neighbors a visit. The next day, I only brought Shen Ling and the Blade Squad. We drove an armored off-road vehicle that I had refreshed. We barreled straight through, arriving outside that large supermarket. The supermarket had been converted into a sturdy fortress, its walls lined with armed guards. Our arrival immediately put them on alert. Who goes there? Identify yourselves. Shen Ling poked his head out and announced loudly, Lin Fan of Blue Bay Base is here to visit leader Chen Yan of the Raging Fire Base. The men on the wall had clearly never heard my name, but they recognized the name Blue Bay Base. A short while later, the main doors of the supermarket opened and a man in a red leather jacket walked out. Trailing behind him was Lu Rian, a fawning look on her face. I hadn't seen her in months, and it looked like she was doing pretty well for herself. She was stunned for a moment when she saw me, but that quickly turned into a look of undisguised mockery and superiority. Well, if it isn't Lin Fan. What's the matter? Couldn't make it on the outside? Did you come crawling to our Raging Fire Base for help? She probably still thought I was that same pathetic weakling who needed her protection. Chen Yan looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on Shen Ling behind me. And the Blade Squad, a flicker of wariness crossed his eyes, but it was mostly disdain. Blue Bay Base? Never heard of it. We don't take in useless people here. Seeing as we're all survivors, I'll let you leave your vehicles and supplies. And then, get lost. He was being incredibly arrogant. In his mind, his own low-level fire manipulation ability was enough to make him fearless. Lu Rian, riding on his coattails, chimed in, did you hear him? Lin Fan, for old time's sake, I suggest you don't push your luck. The way you are now, you're not even worthy of shining Chen Yan's shoes. I looked at that smug, triumphant expression on her face, and suddenly laughed. Lu Rian, do you remember that empty instant noodle box you threw at me? Lu Rian froze, wondering why I'd suddenly bring that up. What instant noodle box? I don't remember. Now scram. Stop being an eyesore. My smile vanished, and my gaze turned cold. You don't remember? Well, I remember it perfectly. And today, I'm here to make you eat it. Lu Rian reacted as if she just heard the funniest joke in the world. She pointed at me and started laughing hysterically. Lin Fan, have you lost your mind? You're going to make me eat an instant noodle box? And who do you think you are? Chen Yan sneered, crossing his arms. You've got a lot of nerve, kid. Looks like I'll have to teach you a lesson. You lot clearly have a death wish. As soon as the words left his mouth, a scorching fireball formed in his palm, radiating an incredible amount of heat. The members of the Blade Squad immediately took up defensive stances. Only Shen Ling and I remained perfectly still. I looked at the fireball in his hand and shook my head. Is that all you've got? So weak. As I said that, I raised my hand. The blazing fireball in Chen Yan's palm, like a candle being blown out, vanished into thin air with a soft poof. The smug smile on Chen Yan's face froze instantly. He stared in disbelief, looking at his empty palm. What happened? Where's my fire? He tried to summon his ability again, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't conjure up even the faintest flicker of a flame. His precious D-class flame manipulation ability was gone. What did you do to me? Chen Yan pointed at me in terror, his voice shrill. I didn't answer him, just turned my gaze to Lu Rian, who was already paralyzed with fear. Now, what do you think gives me the right? Lu Rian's lips trembled, her face was drained of all color. Although she didn't know what had happened, She had seen with her own eyes how that terrifying fire ability was silently nullified right in front of me. Fear left her unable to utter a complete sentence. She was thrown before me by Shen Ling like a helpless chick, kneeling on the ground, begging me for mercy as tears and snot streamed down her face. I watched this pathetic display without a single ripple of emotion. I took something out of my pocket. It was a crushed, braised beef-flavored instant noodle box, the very one she had thrown at me back then. I had kept it all this time. The empty box in my hand instantly restored itself into a brand new box of instant noodles. I tore open the packaging, dumped out the noodle brick and seasoning packets inside, leaving only the empty paper bowl. I placed it in front of Lu Rian. Lu Rian stared at the empty paper bowl on the ground, her face paler than a corpse's. She knew I wasn't joking. With trembling hands, she picked up the paper bowl and was forced to eat it under everyone's gaze. Tears and snot smeared her face. Chen Yan watched this scene, finally realizing what a terrifying existence he had provoked. And so, his legs gave way, and he too fell to his knees. I didn't look at him. I just watched Lu Rian quietly, until she had swallowed the entire paper bowl, wrapper and all. The fall of the raging fire base was even simpler than I had imagined. Having lost their leader's ability and been scared out of their wits by my methods, they surrendered with almost no resistance. I merged the two bases. Blue Bay Base became the most powerful survivor faction in the eastern part of the city. After finally resolving the matter with Lu Rian, I devoted all my energy to the base's development and to the study of these special abilities. If word ever got out that I could cure the zombie virus, it would undoubtedly send shockwaves through the entire world. Until I was strong enough to protect myself, I had to keep this a secret. I established a secret medical laboratory, managed by my parents, dedicated to treating the infected who could still be saved. Every single person I cured was deeply grateful to me. They became my most loyal followers. My power and influence snowballed without me even realizing it. During this time, I also encountered other survivor factions. To my friends, I offered supplies and aid. As for my enemies, I showed absolutely no mercy. The name Lin Fan gradually became a legend. Some said I was a savior sent from on high, while others said I was a world-ending demon. But no matter what they said, they couldn't deny one fact. I was already standing at the apex of this apocalyptic world. In the 5th year of the apocalypse, Blue Bay Base had expanded into a mega-city with a population of 100,000. We had a comprehensive defense system, self-sufficient agriculture, and a society where order had been restored. Here, smiles had returned to people's faces, and I, as the city's creator and guardian deity, rarely appeared in public. Most of my time was spent in the highest tower at the city's center, overlooking the city I had built with my own 2 hands. My ability was also a far cry from what it once was. I no longer needed physical contact to refresh everything within my line of sight. I could refresh a barren piece of land, make it fertile. I can cleanse a contaminated water source and make it pure. My power is becoming more and more like that of a true god. Shen Ling is now the commander-in-chief of the City of Hope. She stands behind me, reporting the latest situation. My lord, the zombie horde from the west is drawing nearer. Their leader is a type we've never seen before. An intelligent, S-class mutant zombie. An S-class zombie is the ultimate catastrophe in this apocalypse. It possesses the power to destroy an entire city. Hearing this, my gaze pierced the vast distance, and I saw the endless tide composed of hundreds of millions of zombies. A black wave that blotted out the sun. I also saw the center of the horde, where an S-class zombie sat upon a throne of bones, like an emperor. He seemed to sense my gaze as well. His scarlet eyes met mine in the air. A terrifying wave of psychic pressure surged towards me, crossing hundreds of miles. Shen Ling let out a muffled groan, her face instantly turning deathly pale. However, with a gentle wave of my hand, the pressure vanished into thin air. Are you ready? Shen Ling took a deep breath, her eyes filled with resolve. The City of Hope swears to live or die with you. I just smiled and shook my head. No, we will not perish. I turned to look at her and at every single person in this city. This apocalypse, it's time for it to end. I walked out of the City of Hope alone and stood upon the city walls, facing the horde that seemed poised to devour the very heavens and earth. Inside the city, 100,000 citizens watched me on massive screens. They were nervous and terrified, but more than that, they were filled with trust. The roar of the S-class zombie sounded like it could rip a person's soul apart. He commanded the horde to launch its final assault. I slowly raised my hands, as if I were about to embrace the entire world. Everyone thought I was about to unleash some world-shattering attack. But they were wrong. There was no killing intent on my face. Only a hint of compassion. My power was never meant for destruction, but for rebirth. I closed my eyes and released all of my power without holding anything back. It wasn't aimed at any single zombie, nor at any particular region. It was for this scarred and terminally ill world. Time itself seemed to stop at that moment. A gentle and boundless white light, impossible to describe with words, radiated out from me, spreading across the entire world. Wherever the light passed, the frenzied zombies stopped in their tracks. Their rotting bodies began to heal, and their clouded eyes regained their clarity. The violence and bloodlust in their eyes were replaced by confusion and humanity. The light swept across the land. On the cracked earth, tender green grass began to grow anew. The gray haze dissipated, revealing the azure sky that had been hidden for so long. The S-class zombie on the throne of bones watched in horror as its own body began to change. It tried to resist but was powerless to stop it. This power, a fundamental law from the world's very origin. In the end, he too returned to his human form. Staring blankly at his own hands, the entire world had been renewed. Everyone infected by the virus returned to normal. Every environment destroyed by the apocalypse was restored to life. It was as if that 5-year-long nightmare was just an illusion. The city of hope was deathly silent. Everyone was watching through their screens, staring blankly at this miraculous scene. After what felt like an eternity, the first person began to cry with joy, followed by a second, and a third. Finally, a deafening cheer resounded throughout the entire city, throughout the entire brand new world. They were shouting my name. I stood on the city wall, feeling the gentle breeze, and looked back. I saw Shen Ling. I saw my parents. I saw countless faces filled with joy and hope. I smiled. The instant noodles in front of me can be infinitely refreshed, and so can this world at my feet.